Hello, in this video I'll be showing you how I install E39 coilovers on an E34. So there's three main modifications we're going to have to make. First being cutting and welding of the factory hubs, re-drilling of the front strut towers, and re-drilling of the rear strut towers. E34's front shock spring combo is very limiting when it comes to modification. Cutting and welding in mounts for a modern coilover setup is the best option. With expensive and few weld-in options for the E34, modifications to run E39 coilovers is both cost-effective and gives you many options to choose from. The coilovers I've chosen can be found online for a couple $100 under the name Max Speeding Rods. Here's a shot of the completed front strut tower. Using the outermost hole as a guide, we'll mark then drill the new holes needed to fit our E39 mounts. So here is our camber plate, and we are working on the front left side of the car here. We're going to use the outermost hole and the stud that's in line with our camber adjustment, thread the nut on there a few turns, and flip it over to use it as a guide pin. In this orientation, we can then visually center the studs in between the factory holes and mark this location with a scribe. Here's an example on the rear. We'll then center punch and drill with a 1/16 inch bit. I then mark the two remaining studs, reinstalled, and check to make sure I could see my marks through the holes I just drilled. Now, in fine increments, we can begin increasing the size of the holes, frequently checking alignment and making adjustments as needed. The final few step-ups being made with a Christmas tree bit, as a regular bit may try to bite into the other hole. Finally, we can test fit our mount and enjoy success. I've chosen a thin, soft washer as the nut is beginning to clamp on the raised portion here. The process for the rear is the same as the front, with the main difference being we'll be working up through the wheel well as there's limited space up top. I began by positioning the mount as shown, using an additional nut to keep it in place. The innermost holes are used as the guide holes, and any stud can be used as the mount is symmetric. I began by lining up the holes and scribing their location. I will again center punch and begin the holes with a 1/16 inch bit. Here are some tips to help the drilling process go smoothly. First, you'll want to use sharp drill bits intended for use on metal. Periodic use of some light oil such as WD-40 will also help. Most importantly, proper drilling technique is key. You'll want a very low bit speed and high pressure on the drill. Running the drill at full speed will quickly ruin the bit and make the material harder to drill through. Seeing large coils of metal coming out of the flutes means you're doing it right. Now we have some nice clean holes for our mounts to slot into. Finally, to ensure the mount is sitting flush, some light grinding along the edge intended to be mounted towards the inside is needed. Now, with a smile, we can install the rear coilovers. So when cutting your factory hubs here, there's a couple things you'll want to consider. First being your desired ride height, second being ease of welding, and third being factory attaching points. Generally you'll see cutting close to the base and welding directly to the hub. This will allow for the lowest possible ride height, but will only allow for welding around half of the sleeve. I've left 3.5 inches of the original tube to allow for a complete weld and to meet my ride height needs. So how these are intended to work in an E39 is they slide into a clamp of sorts with a bolt that squeezes it tight, and your coilover is securely mounted to your hub. But what we'll be doing is cutting roughly 1/4 inch above this lip here, which will allow us to slide it down onto our factory hubs and weld it on. So I've got my cut section here, and I've ground down to bare metal on both sides. And I'm using some athletic tape here to help take up some space, so this fits nice and snugly. So when we make our adjustments, this will stay put. A reason to not be worried about how perfect these cuts are lengthwise is what we're really interested in is the overall length of these. So as long as things are roughly in the ballpark, you can get this length right, and you'll be in good shape. Now, something else that's probably the most important part about this process is making sure that this is indeed square with this piece. This not being square will affect your camber, caster, and wheel clearance. First, I'll set the length. Then, I'll closely set the alignment. Next, I'll tack weld, check the alignment again, and adjust as needed. After a few more tacks, and confirming the alignment, I'll finish the weld. So now that I've welded on the coilover attaching tube, it is time to cut and reattach the brake hose and wire holders, and relocate our sway bar attaching point. For the fixed brackets, we will simply cut and re-weld them on in the same location. As for the sway bar link attaching point, I'm going to attempt to make it adjustable with the given E39 mount. Make sure to take measurements of where the brackets sit and their orientation. An easy way to remember is the brake caliper bracket and the sway bar link attaching point are both parallel and on opposite sides. When it comes to the issue of mounting the sway bar, the simplest solution is to not run one at all. The next easiest being welding the attaching points on in a fixed location. However, I'm going to show you my attempt at making the mounts adjustable. After cutting the attaching points off, I'll start by making relief cuts in the metal to make it easier to bend. Despite the relief cuts, the mating surface has been rounded. I will use a pair of ice grips, a 13mm socket, and a press to help correct this. So this is what I came up with to have an adjustable sway bar mount and keep our wires nice and tidy. So this is intended as the mount for the E39 sway bar. I've taken the factory mount, put it in a vise, squished it together, and it's going to fit like this and sit like this. And I'll be able to spin it to change the height up or down. Now shows the partially completed mount, with a nut welded on the inside for attaching the link. Now we'll attach the fixed brackets, being mindful of heat as we don't want to melt the threads on the inside. Make sure to weld in a well-ventilated area, or best, wear a respirator, along with protecting your skin and eyes. So here is my finished product. I added another bracket located here to better handle torsional loads. And I have the fixed brackets welded in at the correct height and orientation. I've got a full mock-up here. You can see our mount adjusts by spinning, and will be locked in place with one of these. Also, you can see the link is attached and spins freely in its nut plate. Here's a final look at the coilovers after they've been installed.